We are live on Proline TV, the R-Lads Football Network, talking AFC East football with the Miami Dolphins and our special guest, Jason Sarney, of course, joining us as usual. And, of course, Jason is with Dolphins Wire. How's it going, Jason?
It's going well, Greg. Thank you so much. Hope all is well on your end. And we are approaching the regular season start, so excitement is in the air.
Oh, yes. This is the best conversation we have all year. Only a couple of more weeks to go before we get started. So one more preseason game for the Dolphins. That'll be Saturday night at home against Jacksonville. They kick off the season at Indianapolis right now, a 1.5-point dog. We'll get into that game a little bit. Also, basically take a look at the Dolphins win totals, futures, and things of that nature a little bit later on. But first, let's go ahead and take a look at the depth chart for the Miami Dolphins via rlads.com. And first of all, I guess I should start really on defense because there's a new addition in Matthew Judon as far as the edge rush department goes. Judon had a pretty bad end to his tenure in New England. He wasn't happy. He wanted to get paid. Patriots weren't going to pay him, so they shipped him to the Falcons. Falcons' desperate need for edge rushers, thought they had a good deal, and it did not work out. Matthew Judon did not have a good year with the Atlanta Falcons, and Miami's hoping he still has something left in the tank.
Yeah, he brings his 72 career sacks to South Florida, and he joins an already very deep edge rusher group within the linebacking core, as well as the defensive line group. So the front seven potential for this Miami Dolphins team and defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver is probably the best area on the squad. And even Weaver told reporters yesterday, you can't have too many of these guys. No. So they add yet another speed type of a rusher. And people are starting to kind of talk about reminiscence of the New York Giants NASCAR package. I'm calling it the Formula One package because they're a bit faster. And, of course, Miami hosts the Grand Prix at Hard Rock Stadium. So let's see if that takes off.
And, of course, your president and CEO runs the Miami Grand Prix. So, okay.
We're always trying to cross-promote here.
Yeah. So let's start there. Like you said, it looks like that is where the Dolphins look the strongest. But how is the health of some of their players, some of their edge rushers?
Well, that is the key. Obviously you lose Bradley Chubb in 2023 through all of last year. Jalen Phillips, a couple of straight injury seasons that were shortened. And Phillips, if he could just put it all together and stay healthy, man, was he on way, to having career years the last 2 years. And of course, Bradley Chubb, the veteran presence there. The good news is with a Judon, with a Chop Robinson, who, of course, is dealing with a training camp, arm, shoulder, elbow kind of situation, getting them all on the field in rotation, kind of bringing down some snap counts and getting them fresher as you get later into the season. That's probably the major benefit of bringing these guys all in together. Now, remember, Chubb, Phillips, Chop never played a game, all three of them together. So that's very interesting to hope for and wait to see. And then you throw in Judon in the mix, and it could be one of the best, if not the best, pass rushing four in the league.
Yeah, they have to stay healthy in order to accomplish that. Yeah, and if they do, then that's going to be a big boost because, and I know we didn't start with it, but there isn't a team in the NFL, or there isn't, let's just say, a coach in the NFL, as you're well aware. There is, if everybody, every season, everybody got which head coaches are on the chopping block, which team is the one that really needs to get off to a good start. And there's probably no team that is talked about more in those categories than the Miami Dolphins and McDaniel. From the Dolphins' perspective, someone that covers the Dolphins, you have a different perspective. Could be similar, could be way off. So where do you stand, and where do most of the Dolphin fans stand regarding that premise, that possible premise that, hey, all of a sudden after a really good 4-year run, back-to-back playoff appearances, there's 1 8-9 season, and all of a sudden, if the Dolphins don't get up to a great start, they're going to start cleaning house. Can you hear me
Well,
there?
like a lot of things in Miami Dolphins. Yep, I got you. Like a lot of things in Miami Dolphins world, there's two sides to every kind of story. A lot of folks
Absolutely.
will say, "Hey, give McDaniel a chance. He's done great things. He's got a turned over roster, sort of. But then again, you look at another side where it's been 25 years since there's been a playoff victory. General Manager Chris Greer has done a lot of good, but at the same time, it's been 25 years since a Miami Dolphins playoff victory, and he's been in the building for about 20 of them, GM for about 9 of them. So you wonder what is the missing piece. And as for McDaniel specifically, for all of his offensive wizardry and his quarterback whispering, there are a lot of things that he needs to improve on from, just coaching in terms of clock management, when to throw timeouts out there, when to call certain plays. He's a genius in play design, but sometimes last year on a 3rd and short, a 4th and inches, he'd deviate from running straight up the middle and try to do one of these speed plays to the outside, or his ball carrier's 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, so he now needs to get 4 or 5 yards to pick up the first down. That could have had a lot to do with personnel on the offensive line, a little fear of not being able to get that push. But to Chris Greer's credit, that's exactly what they fixed on both sides of the ball. The trenches, the toughness, the new identity that everyone's been waiting for. They really had a very good draft with players who could change that negative stigma. You draft 3 defensive linemen, you spend a trade up to go get Jonas Avayanaya, who is going to be plugged in at left guard. But McDaniel has to prove that he can be a head coach, a leader of men, a game manager, and not just a guy who's going to bring some really fun offense to the fray here. But the interesting thing is that the Dolphins have Anthony Weaver kind of waiting in the wings, whereas if things go really south really quickly, I'm talking like 1-4 of a start. I'm not hoping for that, of course, but it would probably behoove the Dolphins to make that interim coach, if that's the case. And you got to keep Anthony Weaver home because this team is built to his strengths as a coach with that front 7, as we talked about with the addition of Judon and everything else they have on that front 7. So the Dolphins could also, with their talent, surprise and go, 4-2 to start. And if that's the case, you got to ride the wave out and see what happens. But there is a gauntlet, Greg, in the middle of the season. You got Buffalo, you got Baltimore, you got a trip out to Spain with the Commanders. If they head into that 2-3 wins, they can come home with a really poor record from Spain. And that's what you want to avoid. So they have to start out of the gates really, really hot. And we'll see what happens. But their schedule kind of favors a potential decent start. So they're going to have to go at least 4-2. 3-3 if there's any chance of McDaniel lasting through the year and of them having any type of a playoff push.
Yeah, and it would be really interesting to see if Weaver were to take over at some point or even next year in the offseason, because you do get the feeling that in a way it's like 2 different like the offense has one way of doing things and the defense just looks like they're completely different. It just looks like 2 different teams on offense and defense. And so maybe that would be a good thing if things don't go well, that you have the guy in house. And then maybe if that was part of the problem, then Weaver can come in, take over, and then make the entire team into his mold. Because that's what it looks like from the outside, my outside perspective. I look at the offense as being like or at least McDaniel is trying to be, one of these West Coast sexy offensive speed game, teams, put up big points, that kind of thing. But the defense, as you were saying, trying to get tougher up front, offense, defense. But that's Anthony Weaver on his entire defense. That's what he wants to do. He wants to be a tough guy. So that's just from my perspective, is that I just wonder whether or not that's maybe part of why there might be some issues with the offense and the defense. And you see this all the time with coaching staffs. You have to be in sync with your offense and your defense. And that's the one thing I just don't know whether or not that's the case in Miami.
You're dead on. And the problem with Miami, although in 2023, the offense through the air was phenomenal. Raheem Mostert had an amazing year. Devon Achane could be a terrific, one of the best, if not the dual threat running back. But when it comes to needing that power component, they have not had that. And especially when you look at a quarterback like a Tua Tagovailoa, when they're basically defenses are saying, okay, we're going to take away the long ball. We're just going to play too deep.
Yes.
Beat us with what you could do elsewhere. Run up the middle. Here you go. There's no one in the box, and still it's not an easy proposition for the Dolphins to have a power component. So this year, you bring in a James Daniels, a veteran who's going to play right guard. You have rookie in Savaianaya, and Patrick Paul is developing nicely. So if you could add a little bit of that inside zone power, it's almost like a baseball pitcher who only throws a fastball. You got to throw a changeup. You got to throw a slider. You got to get a little bit of a differentiation to fool hitters. And that's exactly what the Dolphins need to do. If they could establish a ground presence, it could set up a play action pass. It could set up Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Tua to do their thing. And defensively, they went from a couple of years ago, safeties and cornerbacks all over the place. That didn't work. Now you're really focusing on the front fellas, and that could help the defensive backfield. And of course, you bring back home Minkah Fitzpatrick, which is certainly a chess piece that Anthony Weaver loves to have. So on paper, the defense, while weak and unproven from cornerbacks, that front seven and Minkah Fitzpatrick could mask those deficiencies a little bit. And if they could have a fearsome pass rush and cut fractions of a second off of opposing quarterbacks' time, it could go around the Dolphins' weakness at cornerback. So it's going to be a fun experiment to see, but who knows? The Dolphins may still even be kicking the tires in the cornerback market.
Okay, well, let's continue to take a look at the defense, and we started with the edge rush. By the way, as far as those other guys that are fighting for a spot on the team, can any of those, let's see, there's 5 other edge rushers on the depth chart. Will any of them make the team?
You know what? It's an interesting question. It's a good dilemma and problem for a team to have to say, who are we going to cut? So when you get past Grant, Biggers, Phillips, Benito Jones, Zach Sealer, Matt Dickerson, Matthew Butler, they're having good camps. You also have Quentin Bell, who showed some spark last year, but not necessarily translated to the regular season. Grayson Murphy was an undrafted free agent last year who was IR'd. He has a couple of sacks in the preseason, but he's been doing great as a pass rusher. Has to overall kind of get that run support and overall game in his repertoire. So I would not envy, and I would love to be a fly on the wall in that cut room when coaches and coordinators are saying, all right, let's build this 53. Let's build a practice squad. Who could we get through the waiver wire, So it's going to be really interesting to see. But I like the 5 on the defensive line of Sealer, Grant, and Jones.
You still with us, Jason? By the way, Jason is on remote down the shore in Jersey, not at his usual headquarters. As you can see by the writing on the wall, it's a dead giveaway right there with that sign. So Jason's been frozen. We were just going over the depth chart, taking a look at those players that he spoke about, and really the front 3 in this 3-4 defense. Of course, Kenneth Grant being the big name, the first-round draft pick. Seiler's been a really good player. The question, though, is in my mind would be nose tackle. Oh, Jason's back. Can you hear me now, Jason?
I'm back.
Okay.
I'm back. My bad.
That's okay. So, yeah. So is nose tackle still where does Benito Jones stand? I mean, to me, I've never seen Benito Jones as a bona fide starter in this league. Is he ready to take that next step? And how's Jordan Phillips looking?
Well, I'll skip to Jordan Phillips. He's looking phenomenal. He is looking. A lot of people were very excited coming on into him being a 5th round draft pick. He excelled at the East-West Shrine Bowl game. He really turned a lot of heads. And what he was been doing in preseason, specifically the last game, the first game against the Bears, he had an amazing play at the goal line where he took on 2 blockers, got rid of them, shedded them, and then met a running back inches before the goal line. And his wrestling background creates such a leverage and such an advantage for him to use what he has extremely well. And I would not be shocked, and this is not a detriment on Benito Jones, I wouldn't be shocked if Jordan Phillips out snaps Jones at the nose. But you got, again, the key word is going to be rotation. The key word is going to be rotation, keeping them fresh. Weaver likes to do that on the front to begin with. But Benito Jones, solid player. Jordan Phillips, 21 years old, but he's looking like a 26-year-old veteran who just signed his second contract at the moment. I'm being serious. I mean, the hype is real with Jordan Phillips.
And what about Biggers? How's he doing? He can make he's gonna make the team okay?
I think he should. Now, he's 6'6" and built almost like a power forward. I think he's got a background in basketball from earlier in his high school career. He is also a guy who could really be valuable on a special teams unit, trying to get his hands up, block a PAT, field goal, what have you. But the Dolphins the last few years have had guys who are extremely skilled at getting their hands up on a third down and batting a ball at the line of scrimmage. So he's a guy who can play different techniques and really help out in that regard in minimal rotational snap counts. I think he should sneak in and make the team. I don't foresee Dickerson or Butler beating him and him getting a cut or ending up on a practice squad. But with his size and his ability, he could be plucked onto another 53 in a heartbeat. So I would think that he's probably guy 51, 52, or 53 at the moment. Okay. But that's not a knock on Biggers. That's just you got some other question marks around the other position groups. But I think Biggers should sneak through.
How many defensive linemen do you think they keep? Do they go 6 or 7?
I've been saying 5 because that's been the number that they've been using recently in the last couple of years. But it could go to 6. I think Dickerson might have a chance, but Butler's right there too. The problem is you need to find where you're going to cut from another position. They need bodies in the cornerback room. They need bodies in the safety room. The wide receiver group could be, if there are 6 wide receivers that should make the team, they could maybe go down to 5 and help out Weaver with one more additional player on the line. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the receivers because there's like 6 or 7 guys who are making a push to be on the roster. Clearly, your top 4 are set in Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, Nick Westbrook-Akine. But you have Taj Washington, who was a 7th rounder last year, I believe. Yeah, and he was IR'd last season as a rookie. But he's doing great. He's catching everything thrown his way, and he's making some terrific production after the catch. You have D. Eskridge, who can return punts, can return kicks, and is doing everything you ask for from a receiver so far in the preseason. And then you got undrafted free agents in Theo Weiss Jr., who had a terrific game against the Detroit Lions, matching up with Quinn Ewers, getting 2 touchdown receptions. And another guy, Andrew Armstrong, who's about 6'4", could really be a good practice squad player. But I think the number safely is 6. Then again, if you want to play a little bit of those roster gambles and see if you can sneak Taj Washington onto a practice squad again, maybe they go 5 because D. Eskridge's ability to handle punts and kicks and play a little bit of receiver.
All right. As far as we talked about the outside linebackers, as far as the inside linebackers, they're pretty much set, correct? The unit looks pretty decent at this point.
It looks good. I mean, Jordan Brooks is coming off a phenomenal year, and Tyrell Dodson, who was signed later in the season, had a terrific kind of like last quarter of the season.
Yep.
But Willie Gay Jr., and he's a young player who's a veteran coming after, a couple of stints with other squads. But Willie Gay Jr. is looking almost like a team captain. And I think that he beat out Tyrell Dodson, who people in Dolphins community was initially thinking it would be Brooks and Dodson in the middle. It's going to be Willie Gay and Jordan Brooks in the middle. That I could take to the bank. And you do have some other intriguing players in that linebacking room. Channing Tindall, not necessarily cutting the mustard the last couple of years after being a decent round pick I think he was a 3rd-round pick a couple of years ago. But a guy to watch is an undrafted free agent, Eugene Asante.
Oh,
A little undersized. I know that's an hour-led special right there. I know that. But when you're looking at the back end of who's going to make this roster, you're looking who could help in special teams. And he's a bullet, a missile kind of a special teams player.
Yeah.
But man, has he put together some good tape in those preseason games. And don't look at the flags that we're throwing on him for like hitting a defenseless receiver. That was bull. That was just a good quality football play. And I think a ref got a little interested in throwing the laundry out there. I think he hit Colston Loveland trying to pick up an extra yard or two, and Asante said not happening, but they did call him for a flag. But it was a clean play. He goes sideline to sideline extremely well, and he could be guy 52 or 53 on this team, but it might be at the expense of a veteran.
Okay. Now let's talk about that secondary. So as you can see there on the depth chart, 4 out of the 5 potential starters, and maybe it's all 5, but 4 of the potential 5 starters, as far as we have it, are new players, free agents, including the big one, Fitzpatrick. So how's that been going, the Fitzpatrick deal? I know we spoke when it took place, but it's been a little while now. So how's he fitting in?
Fitting in great. He's, I will call him a leader, but he's not necessarily the most vocal media leader in the world. It's not like he's going to be jumping into press conferences and really rah-rahing, but he is doing everything he can to, I guess, have that 2.0 of a return to Miami. Originally drafted into Miami, different regime from coaching, not very happy, basically was kind of traded out, forced the issue there. But this is like a fresh start, and everything that Minkah is doing on field and with teammates, A+++. But it's everybody around him that is, I guess, the cliche words that I've been using, young and unproven.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at there. So a lot of moving parts with the cornerbacks, with who might be the nickel. You bring in a Mike Hilton who could do that well.
It was a nice signing. Yeah.
It was a nice signing, as was Jack Jones on the outside. But a guy, and here's another special Our Lads, bonus preview here, Jason Marshall Jr., who actually has been getting experimented on as a nickel. And he's been doing really, really well so far. And Minkah has even sung the praises there as well. So I think that's a shot to keep in mind. Jason Marshall Jr. could very well sneak into that nickel role. So
who, right now, if you had to guess who this, not only the starting outside corners will be when we get around week 1, but also unless they bring in a veteran or make a deal, which I think makes sense. I mean, I'm looking at this again from an outside perspective, and I'm going, this isn't really what they plan on doing, is it? I guess it is. Do they really like these kids a lot better? Is there something that they see in these kids that the outside people just don't?
Well, Storm Duck, another undrafted, young, unproven guy from a year ago, he probably has that cornerback 1 job.
Okay.
And that he could be fine. He's a fine player. They like him. He could be all right. On the outside opposite him, you're looking at Jack Jones at the moment, who is kind of looking to have a little bit of like a reclamation year, Kendall Sheffield is in the mix, but I like Jason Marshall Jr. a lot. And with now his newfound flexibility by even being a boundary or a nickel, watch him creep up the depth chart. And there are a couple of guys who are on that border, like Ethan Bonner, Cam Smith, Ethan Robinson. They just signed Cameron Dantzler. My guess, and Bonner's going to be out for a couple of weeks. He's got a hamstring. So it'll be interesting to see how they maintain that. And Cam Smith is on his last breath to see if he makes this team. He's second-round pick from a couple of years back, and he just has not translated onto the field. So in this kind of a situation with the Dolphins, with their youth, Ty goes to the younger player who hasn't done it yet to give them a chance. If it's between Cam Smith or, Ethan Robinson, who made a phenomenal play to walk off the Dolphins against the Detroit Lions last week with a leaping interception to kind of end the game. again, I just don't see enough recently from Cam Smith. The theme here in my mind is, what have you done for the Dolphins lately? And that's how you might have to answer a tiebreaker question versus a 2 or 3 year veteran or an undrafted free agent or a rookie.
Are you surprised, or is this about the cap? What was, because I would guess the fans have been targeting that position all off season. What is there? Did they miss out on something? Was it, well, they made the deal for Ramsey and that kind of exposed them, but that's what you have to do when you made the trade and you bring in Fitzpatrick. So they were going to be exposed one way or another, I guess. So yeah, what's the thought process, do you think, about that inexperienced, important position that they have going on there?
A lot of Dolphin fans and pundits have been basically saying that this year's cornerback mindset was almost like last year's offensive line mindset. Whereas the famous quote from Chris Grier is, "You guys are a lot more worried about it than we are." I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but we all saw what the problem was with the Dolphins offense last year. It was the offensive line. So you go into a draft scenario and Ramsey is still in the mix. It would have been great for them to have taken care of that trade and prepare for it in the draft.
Yeah.
Now, they did draft Jason Marshall Jr. in the 5th round, but what they did do as well is they traded capital to move up to get Jonas Savaianaya.
They did, yeah.
So the plus was, all right, you got an interior lineman. That was a plus, but it cost you a 3rd and a 4th round pick. Now, what the Dolphins did as well, as Chris Grier likes to do, I call it robbing Peter to pay Paul. They made another trade back to pick up some more draft picks, which they translated into Ollie Gordon and Zeke Biggers. I think those are the exact picks that they got from Texas.
Okay.
So they passed on several cornerbacks. You pass on several safeties. But then you look at the 5th round and you got Dante Trader Jr., Jordan Phillips' teammate from the University of Maryland, and JMJ, Marshall Jr. So can these 5th rounders translate? Now,
Yeah.
Trader might have a little bit of an uphill battle to get on the field as a safety at the moment, but he could play every special teams position there is other than punter and kicker. So he's a guy who could be a very interesting player to watch with his hitting and lacrosse background and just overall cerebral quarterback of the special teams units or the safety group when he eventually gets on the field. So I like their 5th round picks, but will it in the future prove to have made sense that they got out of the 3rd and 4th round? So they could have gotten a couple of other guys at the position. So we'll see. But the Ramsey deal hurt.
Do you think they're set? Is there a cornerback in free agency that's out there? Is there a possibility that they might swing a trade?
There's always a possibility. This is the time where I think Chris Grier definitely does his due diligence. Now, there were rumors, and this is a little bit of a sensitive subject in the Miami Dolphins world. There were conflicting reports that the Dolphins were meeting with Asante Samuel Jr. I'll leave it at that. But there was a neck situation that Asante Samuel Jr. has been dealing with. So if he is healthy enough, will the Dolphins be interested in entertaining bringing him on? Again, another young player who could have a resurrected career. I think he's 25 years old, obviously the son of Asante Samuel. So if the Dolphins are to make another move, he would be intriguing, of course, health permitting. You got guys who might be expendable via trade, Stephon Gilmore, but it's a 50-50. I hate the hedge. It's okay. A 50-50 proposition right now if the Dolphins do want to add to the cornerback group. Now, they did try out 4 yesterday, and they ended up signing Cameron Dantzler. Okay. So they did add to the room. But right now, who are you going to find, and what are you going to have to give up to get a bona fide CB1 or CB2? So that's the conundrum.
Melifonwu, he's all set alongside Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, that would be a solid bet. A guy creeping up who's going to make the team because of his special teams work is Elijah Campbell. But I think Melifonwu, Iffy, as he's called, should be that next guy, safety 2.
All right. Getting back to the offense, you talked about the receivers. So the running game is another area of strength. And that's just by us believing that Jalen Wright and Ollie Gordon are going to outplay, I guess, what other people might think of them. But Jalen Wright certainly looks like he's ready to take that next step. And Ollie Gordon was a 6th-round draft pick that we talked about a few months ago that I think was a great value play all the way in round 6. And he's looked fine to me. But tell me, how does that look? The running back room a strength, isn't it?
You'd like to hope so. And there's a soft tissue leg injury supposedly with Devon Achane. So let's just monitor that.
Okay.
Jalen Wright has not looked fantastic so far.
Okay.
That would have been a mix with he's not running behind or was running behind a full and healthy Dolphins offensive line, but he just didn't look terrific. But Ollie Gordon has, and he is probably leapfrogging Jalen Wright at the moment. Now, the good thing about Ollie Gordon with his overall skill set, he can do a lot of things as a running back other than just run up the middle. He can pass protect. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. So whereas Wright might not have those attributes, Ollie Gordon is a name to circle.
Absolutely. And is it going to be a 3-man room, or is another running back making the team?
They probably would have brought Alexander Madison onto the roster, and he would have made the team, but he unfortunately suffered a season-ending neck injury against the Bears. Completely unfortunate. He was having a really strong camp. They brought in a couple of scrap heap guys in Mike Boone, Aaron Shamklin, but I do not believe that they're going to make the team. No offense to them, but I just think that when you look at where they need help in other positions, you can get away with the 3 running backs, Achane, Gordon, and Wright. And of course, Alec Ingold can be in that backfield too, will be in that backfield too as a fullback.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about another position that is just, I think, a head scratcher for a lot of fans outside Miami, and that's tight end.
Whew.
So, yeah, what's going on there? I mean, Darren Waller, really? I mean, that is a big, dartboard throw if you ever have one. It's just, let's see if we get lucky with Darren Waller, and let's see if he stays healthy. That's the biggest part. And hey, it may work. But again, it's just another dartboard throw, it looks like, from this. And then just take a look at the rest of the group. So is there someone, are there talent? Is there any talent there outside of Waller? Because most of these guys, Brown, we've seen a little bit of, but you tell me. Is there a hidden gem there? How's the room look?
Well, if you're a fantasy player and you got your notepad out, you don't need to use a pen or a pencil right now to jot a name down, because you're not drafting a Miami Dolphins fantasy tight end unless you're taking an absolute flyer on Darren Waller. He was elevated today. It's Wednesday, so Wednesday morning, he was elevated off the PUP. He was not doing anything in practice or the preseason game. I expected him to be elevated, of course. They're going to roster him. Now, if you're looking on why did they bring in Darren Waller after a year on sabbatical for retirement, it does make sense when you look at his former Las Vegas Raiders offensive coordinator in Frank Smith.
Okay.
He had his best seasons under him when they were as Raiders together. So if you want to just answer the question, why in the world? Well, Frank Smith. So maybe if they can get half the production of what he was in 2019, 2020 range, it was a deal that was for virtually nothing. So this is a guy who was also off a year of retirement and also didn't love how he was used as a Giant. So let's see if everything is right in between the ears for Waller and he doesn't necessarily try to make another rap album right now during the football season. So 50-50 on him as well. But he is a tall slot kind of a presence who could decently or semi-adequately replace the Jonnu Smith production. Because there are going to be areas in the field where at 6'6", whether it's the red zone or getting down the middle of the field on seam routes, what have you, there are a couple of guys in the aggregate who will hopefully take those 111 targets that Smith had last year. They're not replicating Smith individually, but it's almost like a Moneyball, let's build Jason Giambi in the aggregate here. And they're going to do that with Waller, Akine, and maybe even guys like Malik Washington and look out. I know this is a completely different physical aspect, but Devon Achane is going to line up in the slot a lot and with fully healthy, get some more receiving reps.
Okay. And then the rest of that room, is there anybody that
no
blocker, anything?
Blocker,
no.
You have Farrell Brown, who is advertised as a blocker, but he comes into a Mike McDaniel system where he's getting flagged in the preseason for illegal formations. And that is something that has been plaguing the Dolphins for the last several years with this kind of creativity. There are shift penalties and formation penalties, and Julian Hill is guilty of that as well. Tanner Conner is an interesting case because he is a one-dimensional receiving, speedy type of a threat who had a great game against the Lions, but what else could you do? Not necessarily that much. He has been a summer sensation the last couple of years, but another player who just hasn't excelled from September on. Okay. So this is another one of those, what have you done for the Dolphins on the field lately? And Chris Myrick was just a camp body. Hayden Rucci is a guy who could really be a darn flux on.
You there, Jason? Nope.
So I don't know if you heard the rookie thing. Sorry about but rookie is more blocker than a receiver.
Okay, got it. And so bottom line is Connor's the guy that me has the most possibility.
Say again?
Connor, he's probably the one guy that has the most possibility. Just keep an eye on him just in case.
If there was a flyer thrown, again, he's made the teams in years past, but
and I should also let everybody know that not only is Jason down at the Jersey Shore, but it's been raining every day that Jason has been in the Jersey Shore. So let me pop him back up here. You back, Jason?
Sorry about that. It's probably the residual hurricane that is going down in
yeah, I just let everybody know that. Yes, they're a little unaware of your situation. Guys. Okay, so let's go quarterback, and we don't need to talk about Tua. We know what the deal is there. So Zach looks like the number 2. Quinn, nice pickup in round 7. So yeah, is there anything to report there regarding either of those players?
I can speculate. And Zach Wilson has not looked fantastic. He's also a guy who is essentially a failed top end second overall pick with the Jets. That's not uncommon. And then, he goes on to Denver and impresses in kind of a practice and behind the scenes kind of a mold. The Dolphins were targeting him pretty much throughout the offseason. A lot of people just expected that signing for $6 million. But I got to tell you, I'd be looking over my shoulder if I was Zach Wilson, especially with how Quinn Ewers has played in his last preseason game, rebounding from a little bit of a difficult initial game against the Bears. He was very, very efficient against the Lions. Mentioned he hit Theo Weiss Jr. for a couple of touchdowns and just looked good. Wilson will remain probably that number 2 quarterback at this exact moment, but it would not shock me whatsoever to have Ewers push that issue throughout the year. And again, this is a 1-year rental for Zach Wilson, and Ewers should be in a perfect world, if Tua is going to be a Dolphins quarterback for the next half a decade, you got the backup in Ewers, who has a similar kind of skill set there. If there were a situation where Tua was out week 8 and Zach Wilson's the starter, I wouldn't be surprised if Quinn Ewers has got his toes up on the line, ready to get sent on in, because Wilson just has not looked fantastic in the pocket. Was sacked a lot. Obviously, offensive line has a bit to do with it, but kind of a little bit of a deer in the headlights situation. Almost threw a pick 6 against the Bears that just was mishandled by a corner. If Tua Tagovailoa threw that exact ball, Twitter would have burned to the ground in, talking negatively about it. But I don't love Zach Wilson. I like Ewers to push that issue.
Is Tua going to start on Saturday?
Great question. I wouldn't be surprised if they throw him out there for a series or two, and it's a couple of little sweeps to running backs and wide receivers and a couple of maybe nice little early pitches. But I would hope that, they do play him for a series or two just to get that game cadence and familiarity going on into the season. But I would love to see Ewers elevated to play with, the second stringers, not necessarily the third and the fringe guys.
Yeah.
And see how Ewers does with them. It could help that decision-making process on his way potentially up the depth chart. And if Zach Wilson is going to get the back end with some of those third stringers, get his confidence up. Hopefully he picks them apart. That would be nice to see. But Tua, I would say, should play the first series.
Okay. And then we wrap it up with the offensive line. And this was the biggest issue last year, and it's been an issue for a while now. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned Paul's looking good, so that sounds good. So is the offensive line then not looking as bad as maybe some people might think?
There's potential for them 1 through 5 to be solid, but the depth is, and I hate to use this word, is abysmal. They do not have a bona fide swing tackle. You got Larry Borum, who probably is that at the moment, but that's not a glowing door. Kendall Lamb was fine the last year or so. He's in Philadelphia. You have Liam Eichenberg, who's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, who has been PUP'd recently, but he should be elevated. Andrew Mayer is another backup who is a fine player, but he's been banged up recently. You really got to pray, if you're the Dolphins and the fans, that every single lineman plays 17 games. But what is the likelihood of that? Austin Jackson is still a little banged up too. But the potential is there for them 1 through 5 to be solid. And that includes the addition of James Daniels and, of course, rookie Savai Anaya. Guys that have been pushing on to the potential depth chart up a bit and getting on that 53 radar. Braden Daniels has been looking solid, so I wouldn't be surprised if he gets on the squad. Have not liked what I've been seeing of Keon Smith. And if you want to maybe throw in Josh Priebe, Daniel Brutskill is someone who they brought in guard.
Yeah, we lost you there towards the end, Jason. You still there? We'll wait for him to come in. He's dealing with a hurricane. Actually, it's good he's not dealing with a hurricane, but he's dealing with the outer bands of a hurricane. And we're going to wrap this up as quickly as we can because it seems like we really are losing Jason here. So you back, Jason?
I'm back on the phone. I got the backup grid.
Oh, good. All right. Excellent. Well, so far, so good. Okay. So just quickly, who has a chance to make the offensive line at the back end?
You got Braden Daniels. I think he is making a push for an interior backup spot. They brought in Daniel Brunskill, veteran who could handle a guard or a center role. He's up there in the mileage on the tires, so I don't necessarily think he is a phenomenal addition, a solid addition, sure. And Josh Priebe out of Michigan is another undrafted guy that they have that could crack, consideration, but I think is a safe practice squad player.
Okay. All right. So as we wrap this up, as I said at the beginning, I wanted to just get your feeling on the season in general. Right here, we're taking a look at the Dolphins win total. They have right now at 7.5. So that's where Vegas believes their win total should be as they pop up the schedule. And as you said, there is an opportunity to start off okay. As you can see here, the Colts and the Pats, and then you do have the Jets in week 4 and the Panthers in week 5. And there's the Browns in week 7, Atlanta. Okay, so is this where right here, week 9, where things get really tough?
That is the gauntlet right there. If they do not have a winning record going into that Ravens game, remember they're going to be playing that on a Thursday, so there's short week, and then heavy travel when you go cross continents to Spain. So if they are not entering that area, like, you got to take care of business against the Falcons. You got to take care of business, at home when you're playing the Jets. You got to take care of business against the Browns. And if they fumble and stumble out of the gates and they lose all three of those games, including that Commanders game, I hate to joke about it, but you might want to leave some people in Spain if that's the case.
Yeah, because you got the bye. And as we all know, that's usually a good time to make a change if a change is warranted, because you come out of the bye with the Saints and the Jets, and that's not bad, but then wrap up with three more really tough games at Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Tampa before you wrap up the season at New England, which, New England is also looking like a potential 500 team because their schedule is pretty easy, especially compared to the Dolphins.
Yeah, they end in New England. That's up in the Northeast with the weather.
That is true too.
To Pittsburgh on a primetime game, which they have not done phenomenally well at recently.
That'll be cold too. Yeah.
To be in the cold for sure. So the schedule has positives, but it's got some glaring negatives that have been plaguing this team. So the Vegas win total is fair. I think that 8 or 9 is a good number to target. So of course that's leading people to the over. If they go under the 7, if they get 7 or less losses, this is a disaster.
Yeah.
And I think it's an implosion waiting to happen. So you'll know week 4 how that's going to project. But I will go a slight over here. I don't think that they're an 11-win team, but 9 is my number. Okay.
So you might want to actually take a look at 8.5 plus 175. Just go for it.
I would recommend doing the 7.5, a little bit of the tax on it, just in case.
Okay. All right, Jason. What you up to now? What are you working on before the season begins?
Got some fun stuff coming up on Dolphins Wire. This is my favorite time of year, projecting the 53. I put out one on Monday. Just it was my 3rd or 4th version of it from either back in OTAs and training camp. So after the Jaguars game, I'll put out another one, which will pretty much be the final projection. I'm also doing some work in a fantasy sense for fantasy sports on SI. So for folks looking to draft in all formats, I got coverage on standard leagues, PPR, dynasty, keeper, best ball, you name it. And there's a lot of folks in the community that do some phenomenal work over on fantasy sports on SI. So please check them out as well. And just excited to get the actual action starting and the speculation over.
Yeah.
And get to week 1.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And I'm sure we'll get the opportunity to talk during the season. Maybe we'll get a Miami Jet week or something like that.
It would be great. It's always a pleasure chopping it up with you, Greg. I appreciate it.
Well, you're in a tough situation. You're down the shore. You're supposed to be on vacation. So I really appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us. So last thing, when 2026 begins, who's going to be the head coach, McDaniel or Weaver?
Can I tell you in the middle of the season?
Nah, you got to tell me now.
I have to?
Yeah.
I would literally say that, I'll answer it this way. If the Dolphins have a winning record going into the gauntlet, you got to run with McDaniel. If they do not, and they come home with 2 or 3 losses after those 3 games,
Going into the bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye in the bye.
Bye into the bye. Exactly.
That's a great way to end our interview here today. Jason, appreciate it as always. And we'll talk to you again, hopefully real soon. And again, want to thank everybody else for watching.